Are you someone who gets super emotional when you're in a high intensity call? Like when your customer yells at you or when your customer comes in irate, mad, disappointed, and most of the time you react by either getting tensed or getting nervous, being panicky to the verge or to the point of crying. It is completely normal. I'm going to talk about how you can deal with that emotion and how you can make your calls better by being more reasonable or logical.
Hi, this is Rhea. You're listening to In Reality, where we talk a lot about career, adulting, and entrepreneurship.
In your line of work, there are really times wherein you get emotional or you get super sensitive by what is happening. And this is not only for people who are taking calls or dealing with unreasonable, upset, or irate customers, but also to anyone in the workplace who might be dealing with managers, bosses, co-workers. And if it's a heated argument or conversation, get super emotional, sensitive, and maybe you just want to cry in the corner or maybe just go home. And I want you to know that that's something that you can actually work on. Not saying that it's bad, but it might have a negative impact in your work or maybe in your life as well, which is why, as much as possible, we try to make it a balanced lifestyle and be more reasonable at the same time. So let's talk about the tips. The first thing that I can share with you is to acknowledge that you're only doing your job. Only if you're actually doing your job, like you're doing the right thing, for example, and you know that for yourself, then never take any customer conversation personally because it will only affect you deeply if you do. I mean, of course, it's a personal conversation at some point, but at the end of the day, if you come to think of it, it's actually going to be more of a business conversation, but with human touch. But the point is that when you speak with a customer who is upset or irate, you have to think that that customer has a reason why he or she is acting that way. And maybe it's unreasonable, but there's something deep inside that customer. There's a reason that that's happening. There's a background as to why that's happening. And it's your job, your responsibility to help that customer out. The reason that agents sometimes get emotional or sensitive is because they can't take the way customers treat them or the way customers speak with them. Unfortunately, though, there are really customers who are like that. And if you've watched my previous episode about demotivation and stress, there are really things that we can control and cannot control. So that part, that's on the customer's part, and that's something that you really cannot control. So what you can do is to accept that it might happen at one point. We're not saying that it is good that you're treated badly or that the customer is shouting at you. We're not saying anything like that. But it does come with the job that you actually chose. And it's not only for customer service specialists, it also can be for other types of jobs in customer service or in other sectors as well. There are really times when you encounter customers who might be illogical or unreasonable. But what the advantage is for you if you are speaking with customers over the phone is that your customers can't really see you, can't touch you or anything. So whatever they may say about you, anything bad or something like that, the truth is they don't really know you. They haven't seen you. They don't know you personally. They haven't interacted with you any more than that business interaction that you've had. Whatever the customer tells you does not define who you are as a person or as an individual. You are so much bigger than that. You're so much better than that, especially outside of work. So if you are just trying to help the customer and doing the things that you can do, but then let's say it's a dead end call and you really cannot do anything anymore, there's really no way to resolve the issue and the customer is still being logical, to not take it personally. You have to understand that that customer is going through something. So just put yourself in the customer's shoes. What if it happens to you? Of course, you will act that way. And if you are the customer and you reprimand a sales lady or a cashier, for example, or a customer service agent, you're not really taking it personally. You're only directing it to the agent because it that's the person that you're speaking with. But in general, you're really upset with the process, the system, or maybe even the management or the entire company. The second thing you need to remember is to observe your thoughts objectively, but don't identify with them. You have to understand that you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings, you are the being that observes, reacts, uses, generates, and experiences those things. This is to say, you can't control them, but they don't control you. You choose what you think about, you choose what you allow to pass, and when you can't allow yourself to let things go, you're trying to tell or show yourself something. So you have to pay attention. That was actually an excerpt that I read from a book previously, and what it meant is for you to be emotionally healthy, you have to understand that you're not your thoughts. You are only reacting to a situation. That's why sometimes you feel emotional or sensitive, and you show a lot more of your emotions, and maybe you feel like crying or you feel a bit tensed or panicky during a certain call. It doesn't make you bad as a person. It's normal that that is happening to you, but don't identify with that thought. Like just because you want to cry or just because like you think that you're not good enough doesn't mean that you're not actually good enough. That's just in your thoughts. So you have to think of your thoughts objectively. Like you can ask yourself, why am I thinking that I'm not good enough? And maybe it's because of that conversation with a customer, because you were not able to resolve the issue, because you were not able to pacify the situation. You're thinking now that you are not good enough, when in reality, it's just your thought. You're actually really more than enough. You are good. It's just that it's the thought that lingers in your head. So you have to be objective. Why are you thinking that way? And what can you do to take control of that situation? The next thing I want to share, if you're overly emotional or sensitive, is that you have to learn how to accept praises and compliments objectively. So when you get a job well done, or congratulations, you did so well, or maybe that you got a perfect survey, accept it gracefully, be very thankful about that compliment, and pat yourself on the back for a job well done. But you also have to think about your performance or about yourself objectively. Like, don't get super high on that excitement that, oh, I get a CSAT score of perfect 5. And you might think this will sound a bit contradictory to some advice that says you have to celebrate your wins and things like that. I mean, it's really important to celebrate your wins, but it's also important to balance out the compliments so that you will not be surprised with the next one in case it's not going to be a good one. Like Murphy's Law, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Like if something can go wrong, it will. So it's really possible that you will get a failing survey at some point, or you'll get yelled at by a customer at some point, or maybe your supervisor will say that your performance is not good. So how are you going to accept that when you're so used to getting compliments and praises? So be grateful, but also understand that you're only doing your job. Remember the first point that I mentioned, you're only doing your job, and even if you exceed expectations, you are doing it because it's the right thing to do. I want to be very clear about this. This does not mean that you downplay your achievements or the small wins and victories that you have. In fact, it's true that you celebrate them, but I just want to reiterate the point that don't get too high on those praises and compliments, because at some point there will be a challenge or a difficult situation that will turn the situation around. And if you're always thinking about like how good you are or the compliments and the praises and everything, then there's a tendency that you won't know how to handle the next situation. And if that negative situation will happen, you will feel overly emotional or sensitive because you're so used to the good things in life. I hope that actually makes sense. Be aware of your emotional triggers so that you can stop yourself before you self-sabotage. So when you are in a heated call, for example, or when you feel that the conversation is getting difficult, then you have to stop yourself when you already feel like yelling at the customer as well, when you already feel like you want to hang up and just release the call. So it helps when you are self-aware. Like you have to know for yourself when you actually get mad or when you get super upset, when you get super emotional. Those things actually manifest physically. So for example, if it's a very heated conversation, you know that you're already getting mad because maybe your heart beats faster than usual, or maybe that you're sweating, maybe that you're already frowning. You can see yourself shaking, things like that. So those are your triggers. And when you are aware of those triggers, you can stop yourself. Like, okay, I'm already shaking. I can feel that my heart is now beating faster. So I have to stop myself. I have to relax and breathe, inhale, exhale, so that I don't go into self-sabotage mode. Like that conversation can only be ruined by you. Unfortunately, even though it's a conversation between you and the customer, at the end of the day, it's still like going to be your call, right? It's going to be your conversation with a customer. The way you control or react to that situation can make or break that call. So think about that. Always think about your triggers so that you can stop yourself at the right time. Counter your emotions by being rational. Now, there's something I want to tell you that I've learned in my previous company. We have this training called Way to Wow Customers, and there was a part of the training explaining the scientific basis of what's happening in your brain. As humans, our brain is actually hardwired to feel emotions first before we act on reason. So that means that whenever something happens that's unexpected, most of the time you react first before you respond. Reacting is pretty much your emotions. You're feeling the emotions inside, but responding means that you're using your logical side of the brain or your reasoning. You're actually thinking of what might have happened. That's why that situation is unfolding in front of you. So you're now using your brain and not just your emotions, right? To give you a non-industry example, let's just say your friend texted you or messaged you saying that she saw your significant other walking with someone else and they look friendly and things like that. And if you didn't know any better, you would react first. So what you will do is probably be mad, upset, or message your significant other and say, "Was that girl?" Or maybe cuss or say bad words, or maybe say things like, something, or maybe do things that may break your relationship right away without actually knowing the reason behind it. And that's your reaction to the situation. And when that happens, that does not necessarily mean that you're bad. It's just that our brain is hardwired to feel the emotions first because that's just how we are made. We feel it first. And then when you calm down, you'll realize that you don't really know the entire story. So you now start to think reasonably. Maybe you message your friend back and say, "Do you have a picture?" Or "You recognize that girl? Where did you see them?" You ask questions just because you want to know what's happening. And when you get face to face with your significant other, you don't just throw away his stuff or slap him without knowing the true story. Maybe that person he was with was just his friend. You know what I mean, right? So in an industry example, say a customer comes in mad, disappointed, and is yelling at you. If you're only using your emotions, you are also threatened to yell back or maybe be rude, snap at the customer because you know that you should not be treated that way without realizing where the customer is coming from. Right. And when you react first, it can really break the call or the conversation. So as a an agent or the customer service specialist, it's also your responsibility to know the root cause of that customer's behavior so that you can help appropriately, right? So now you think, okay, I want to slap this customer, want to end this call right away. You think about it that way, that's your initial reaction, but really you'll need to respond to it by using the logical side of your brain. So now you start thinking that, okay, why is this customer acting this way? Why is this customer yelling at me? I did not do anything bad. So, you're now using your brain. You're trying to understand why the customer is acting that way, right? So when you do that, you are controlling your emotion in a way so that it will not ruin the entire conversation, or you'll be able to turn the situation around. So instead of being mad right away or wanting to yell at the customer right away, or even crying right away because you're too scared of the customer, seek first to understand why the customer is like that. And once you understand that, then move on to the resolution as quickly as you can. I'd also like to point out that whatever you're feeling at the onset, like when you're reacting, if you're not using your logical brain yet, it doesn't make you a bad person. I've mentioned this earlier, but you have to understand that as an emotional person or a sensitive person, you are not your feelings. Feelings are neither good nor bad. They are just feelings. So just because you felt that way doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It happens. What's most important is that you act on that feeling appropriately.
Thanks for tuning in to this podcast episode. Follow me on social media by checking out the links in the description box. See you in the next one.